Hey, what's up, universe? It's 9:11 p.m. on Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023, right? I believe that's right. I'm obviously not in my car. I'm at my friend's place that I met earlier. It's part of the reason I'm being a little quiet. Him and his wife are downstairs. I just want to be mindful and just respectful of the space that I'm in. There's all sorts of synchronicity, it seems, in a way. There's a picture right here. Right? And there's a quote. The reason that's synchronistic to me is because earlier this week, maybe even over the weekend, there was a post on LinkedIn about, crows and eagles. And I made a comment on this post because it inspired me to talk about the word relate. And ever since I learned about the etymology of the word relate, I ask myself, what am I bringing back to whatever it is that I'm experiencing? And, the quote, I don't know if you read it, it says, but those that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. I believe it's Isaiah 40:31. I've been crying a little bit. We just got back from dinner, and they took me to the Olive Garden, and I don't think I've eaten at the Olive Garden since I was married to Angela. That's not true. It's been very, very rare that I've gone to the Olive Garden over the last 10 years. So just having a very, a nice meal I'm grateful for that. And then the generosity of allowing me to stay in their house for tonight, and then, if need be, tomorrow night. And it just reminds me of there was just a lot that came up. The guy that I used to work with out at Apple, his name was Jeff. I've mentioned before, he and I seem to be from similar cloth. And, he spoke about how he took in, a guy one time and gave him food and shelter, and just because, And that was coming back to my mind today. And I learned more about Alan, and he's a deacon with his church, and his church used to participate in that group that he was telling me about that supports, the homeless here. And he says that last year his church stopped participating. And I forget if he told me why or whatever. He said that he did not enjoy the fact that his church stopped participating, because as a deacon, that was one of the ministries that he was in charge of, or that he participated with. And so I learned that Alan's actually been helping out in this context for quite a while. And he goes, it's honestly why I asked you. He said, that's why I asked you if you needed a place to stay. I'm finding that the generosity is overwhelming. And I'm finding that the challenge for me is allowing myself to receive the generosity and the hospitality and the kindness. I mean, obviously I'm allowing myself to do that. It still is challenging. There's a huge part of me that would rather there's a huge part of me that just desires to be able to do it on my own. And when I look into that, I feel that it feels ego-based, it feels like a lone wolf mentality, It feels counter to the idea of community. And that's part of the reason I'm allowing myself to accept it, is because if I go back to the language I was using at the house that I just left, right? I said, that house felt like it was for not just me and the boys, it was for like the community. And as I'm reflecting back on how everything is unfolding, it makes me wonder if on some level I wasn't being told or being informed or guided towards community. And opening myself up and letting go of these notions that I had in my head of what it looked like or what it felt like, or even my role within community. And the idea of participating in, receiving help from an organization like, it's called IHN, I forget what it stands for, is very counterintuitive to me. I'm going to allow myself to receive help, and it scares me, and I find it challenging for a lot of reasons. There's fear around it. There's fear around everything I spoke about before regarding my debts. And what's interesting about that's synchronistic, is that today's challenge with the abundance challenge that Jeremy is putting on is listing out all of my debts and everything, like monthly payments on whatever, And as I read that, I felt resistance to doing that challenge, and I haven't done it yet because of I don't want to have to face that. I don't want to have to acknowledge my mess. And then, unrelated in a way, on LinkedIn, there's a man, I think he's over in Italy. We've been messaging, another Zendesk connection, and it has to do with, our conversation has turned to hospitality, and if I'm over in Italy, he'd love to host me. And I was like, well, if you're ever in the United States, in the Midwest, within Kansas City, I'd reciprocate that. Yeah, obviously can't kind of do that in the moment, but with the intention that when I'm able to, then yes. And then another gentleman on LinkedIn, also a Zendesk connection, we were chatting today, and he's in the UK, and this is different, and this isn't Mac, this is another individual, and he told me that a few years ago he was homeless as well, so he knows what it's like. And I told him I really appreciate that. And we spoke about, he mentioned, he had mentioned about having not very many possessions, and talking about, the freedom that comes from learning to let go. And it just, these synchronicities, these things that I've been working through and talking about and experiencing. And I just find it strange that there are these conversations I'm having with people that I just happen to come across, and the experiences that they've had, and the commonality just goes back to my feeling of community and humanity and being human. I'm processing a lot, and I don't know what it is. I know one thing I wanted to say is that I do cry a lot. I almost cry every day. And it's not because I'm sad, necessarily. Even though I do feel like I grieve a lot. And the reason I grieve a lot is because, well, if you watch that video from the men's group, they called it the love seat, right? Where these men are telling me what they see in me. And one of the men, you'll hear say that my commitment to transformation. And it just reminds me of the line from that movie that came out a few years ago about, Rocket Man, I believe is the name of the movie, Elton John. And the line is something like, "You have got to kill who you are to become who you want to be," something along that line, right? And the vision of the tree being uprooted, and me talking about letting go of my professional identity. And there's a lot of symbolism and synchronicity, and what I feel are messages, things that I'm experiencing that are absolutely in alignment with this idea of big parts of me that are dying. And naturally, I grieve that. Yet it's also what I've been praying for and asking for, both with my daily prayers and with the intentions that I write. I didn't specifically write like, "Hey universe, I'm looking for this part of me to die." I didn't specifically ask for that. I asked to be in absolute perfect alignment with the divine design of my life. I don't know what that is. I'm just going to allow my life to happen, and continue to go along with what feels guided. And, while it's uncomfortable and I grieve these transformations, this isn't the first time I've had to do this. It's not the first time I've experienced this kind of transformation or a transformation. And so while I might be grieving the transition, the change, I just part of the reason I'm able to be calm in these types of situations is because in a way I'm used to the process. Like, I understand its process. And because of that, I take comfort in knowing that it will be okay. And that's why I shared that song on my story by Death Cab for Cutie, Grapevine Fires. And why I said my life feels like this. It feels like there's really big parts that are being burned away. And it's just a matter of time. You know? For everything to settle and for new things to come in. And for me to look back on this and be like, man, that needed to happen. And I just think back to the memory when I got to the house and I was moving in and I was like, I've reached the peak of my Everest. I was like, don't forget, I've got to make it back down. So part of me feels like I'm on my way back down, and there's a part of me that died on the way back. Although I'm not dead, so I'm still making my way back down. But I'm not the same. And I think that's the point of climbing Everest, is that you do it and you're not the same. And I view that with every journey. It's kind of what I got. I've been talking for a while now, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. All right. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. Thank you for giving me time and space. I do want to say that part of the fear, real quick, because I just want to make it part of this video. I don't want to have to come back for another one. Part of the fear is, I referenced this quote on this thing, and it's a biblical quote. There is a resistance in me for some reason about being pigeonholed into some type of Christian program. And I was talking to Alan about this, and the reason is like, I respect all faiths, and when I study and look at all of the different faiths, all of the great teachers are basically saying the same thing. You know, we're all one, we're all connected, love, being in harmony and peace with your fellow man, nature, The messages across all spectrums of philosophy of all of the religions are very similar when you distill them down to their fundamentals. So for a long time, I've said that all of the religions are saying the same thing. It's just the pageantry, the ceremony, the symbols that they choose to use, the allegories, the stories that they use to pass down these messages. The changes for the culture, for the people, you know what I mean? But that's it. Otherwise, the fundamental message is always the same. And so that's always what has actually made me uncomfortable with going to church and religion in general, is because in my mind it's all the same. And so that's part of the resistance that I have about accepting some of these, like going to IHN tomorrow, or talking to them tomorrow. Or just even engaging anybody. A lot of these homeless shelters are Christian-based organizations. And there's just a fear, and I can't really describe it, around, I'm not going to compromise my beliefs around everything is the same across all of these religions, and I'm not on a crusade to change anybody's mind. I'm not here to defend myself or change anybody's mind. And so the fear is probably irrational. And I think that's part of the reason I have to allow myself to be open to receive it, because it's challenging myself and challenging my own resistance. So I just want to put that out there. Okay. It's been like 20 minutes now, so thank you again. I love you guys. I'll talk to you later.